Country's railway network is in a state of decline, and with freight not being transported by rail, congested roads are becoming more overburdened. Corruption, theft and ailing infrastructure have all contributed to the problem as well. Let's unpack this with Professor Jan Havenga from the Industrial Engineering Department at Stellenbosch University. Prof, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Just firstly, with regards to the freight and rail and us not having rail networks that will be able to transport our goods, it then puts our roads into danger, right? In danger of the infrastructure actually dilapidating even further. Or are we incorrect in thinking that this is what also contributes to what we see when it comes to our road infrastructure as well?
No, without a doubt, it's a terrible mess that we're in. If you just think about the container corridor that been spoken of before, if all the freight that should be on rail, that easily could be transported by rail, and I listened to Gavin Kelly when he talked about that, we could probably take about half of the trucks off that corridor. And not only that, we've built those corridors to carry a lot of trucks, but what about all the rural areas? What about all the coal and manganese that's been transported by truck at the moment over roads that cannot bear this at all? And all our rural roads are destroyed, the N4 is being destroyed, the road towards Maputo is destroyed. We are really in a terrible mess as far as that is concerned. And it touches the road as well, terribly so.
So obviously this is a ripple effect, right? Because at the end of the day, it also affects the economy. For instance, farmers who could transport their goods, like you say, at half the time that they do now, could have actually serviced a lot more clients.
Exactly, and it gives access to those people to markets, which they currently don't have. To give an idea, our calculations say that the Transnet's and especially the railway's failure to deliver what it should have delivered last year probably cost our economy equal to 6% of GDP. If you look at general freight and Transnet, so if you exclude the coal line and the iron ore line, we've reached levels that we last saw in the Second World War. The lowest levels of transport of freight on rail since the Second World War, which is really a terrible situation if you think about it. The one that needs to be fixed and addressed as soon as possible.
And of course, Prof, another thing that is downplayed by government is rail. Besides rail having to do with the transporting of goods and services, there's also, for instance, rail for transport for the poor that used to rely on such services, and now it's no longer available. And now they are forced to use taxis or buses, which are more expensive.
Our passenger rail network is even worse off as far as transport is concerned. It's the lowest levels that has been in many decades that we've seen. Yes, you're 100% right, but it's not only about that. I specialize in freight. And the fact that we don't provide access for people in rural areas for their produce to markets is something that really concerns me, and it is of a great worry. And it's caused by a lot of problems. It is true. It's about vandalism. It's about theft. It's about things like that. It's about the locomotive issue in the railway. But it's also poor management over the last 2 or 3 years. Things that leadership that should have been better. But there is hope. I think there's hope.
Where's the hope? Maybe just share it with us on this Blue Monday.
No, I wanted to say that because I really feel positive about it. The president has stepped in. And we sometimes feel that our president moves a little bit too slowly, in a stepped sort of way. But he promised business a logistics crisis committee in April. He made that promise. He called in Transnet. He spoke to Transnet. He told them what he expects from them in terms of cooperating. Most of the CEOs in South Africa from businesses promised the president their support. They've put this crisis committee together within a month. That started to operate last week, and there's all sorts of reasons to believe that from the freight transport side, there's going to be a huge intervention from a combined effort from business and from government, and promises from both sides to cooperate and try to fix this. So I'm hoping that through Operation Vulindlela and through the crisis committee and the discussions I had over the last 2 weeks, that we are going to see some action in the next few weeks.
And if we don't see such action in the next few weeks, where does it put us economically?
It's very simple. A failed railway will be a nail in a coffin of a failed state. We cannot go without the railway. It needs to work. There's no doubt about it. Otherwise, we'll have problems. You think last year there's 30 million tons of coal that we couldn't export at 5,000 rand a ton. We're talking about more than 100 billion rand that this country has lost. Only the tax revenue from that we would have went to government could have been as much as 50 billion rand. That's missing. We don't have it. We can't continue like this. We're probably going to lose a few 100,000 jobs.
Yeah.
So this is not, it's not a question. We have to get it right. Otherwise, we're going to have huge problems in this country.
Something else that, we might have to get right, Prof, and you can talk to us a bit about that, is the issue around security. You mentioned vandalism, etc. And, a lot of people have been wondering why you're not putting security, adequate security at state assets that are that important to the economy, the entire drive of the economy. Why aren't you putting security there? And maybe also the conversation around whether or not there's also an inside job when it comes to some of the vandalism that we see.
Security touches on all the aspects. You're right. In terms of inside job or in terms of corruption or anything like that, that is something that we need to deal with. The other thing that we need to deal with is homelessness and joblessness. We need something like a social contract. Countries like this in the rest of the world that got in a position like this got into a social contract with the people and the communities that live around the railway. You know that the value on top of a coal train is 85 million rand. So if you have nothing and you see this train coming past and there's 85 million rands on this train, you're also beginning to feel that maybe people should be more included, and we should be more inclusive around communities that lives around the railway line, get them involved in small works and stuff like that around there. So the social contract's important. But then, yes, security is better technology. And what the railway talks about these days is outcomes-based security contract that we didn't have up to now. So there's a few solutions that we need to address, and we need to get to that, and we need to get that immediately. You know that they steal about 50 kilometers of overhead wire every week in this country. 50 kilometers. We cannot afford that.
Yeah, we cannot afford any of the things that's happening. And what's sad, Prof, for a lot of us is that it's things that could have been avoided. Thank you so much for your time here on eNCA. Professor Jan Havenga, he is live for us in Eiserfontein in the Western Cape, and he is from the Industrial Engineering Department at Stellenbosch University.